La 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 la. The Politics of Kingdom Come, from page 152 that I just opened to, of Recollected Essays 1965 to 1980, essays from The Long-Legged House, The Hidden Wound, A Continuous Harmony, The Unforeseen Wilderness, and The Unsettling of America by Wendell Berry. Just had a quick impromptu meeting with Chad and Laura at the Old Sturbridge Coffee House, and they now know that today is the day of Mars, and it's every week, every Tuesday, as Laura asked me, is it every Tuesday? Yes, because Tues is Mars in Norse. Wednes, Odin's Day. Mercury Day, Wednesday, Thursday, Thor's Day, Jupiter, which is Jupiter, Norse version of Jupiter. Friday, Freya, Frigg, Venus, Aphrodite, Astarte, Ishtar, Easter, Esther, Oyster, Estrogen, Isis, Gene of Isis. Somebody stop me! The Politics of Kingdom Come. This is part, don't forget, 139 of 1967 to 1949. And after this, it'll be 1948 to 1930. RR, the Roadhouse, and the RRR Dinar, and the Recollection Road, and the Red Rocks, and the Red Sox, the Swamp Scott. Oh, do you hear that? The bell's tolling. I gotta roll down the window and hear the bell. The church bell. All the geoengineering in the sky. Bell is striking. Is it 8 or 9, Diane? We're gonna go up there to the labyrinth. We're gonna go the opposite way we went last time. This time we're gonna go the labyrinth, up to the crucifixion, and then down the 14 stations back in reverse to get back to the car. First, we're gonna read a little bit of Wendell Berry to set the mood here. I'm gonna roll this window back up because they have geoengineered some serious cold here. Just like they geoengineered a serious bitch slap the other night to distract you. Just like the new Cold War is a distraction, it's all a distraction from what's going on at the top causal layer of this mystical material world here called Earth, or Heart. The top level of it, you get the protective shield turned into Swiss cheese from nuclear testing and from radioactive material having been mined and put into the everything. Radioactive decay. Atomic suicide. That's later. We're going to finally go to a person's video of reading of Atomic Suicide by Walter and Lau Russell. That's what humanity is committing. Has committed already, actually. The world has already ended. People just haven't gotten the memo. We're in the new world now, the new world order. 2. The Politics of Kingdom Come. Times of great social stress and change, when realities become difficult to face and to cope with, give occasion to forms of absolutism demanding perfection. We are in such a time now, and it is producing the characteristic symptoms. Let's look at when this was published first. It's essays from 1965 to 1980, so it's in that time. The fifth printing was 1995, and the copyright 68, 69, 1970, 1971, 72, 77, 1980, and 1981 by Wendell Berry. We are in such a time now, and it is producing the characteristic symptoms. It has suddenly become clear to us that the practices and ambitions that we have been taught from the cradle to respect have made us the heirs apparent of a variety of dooms. Some of the promised solutions on which we have been taught to depend are not working, are probably not going to work. And as a result, the country is burdened with political or cultural perfectionists of several sorts, demanding that the government or the people create right now one or another version of the ideal state. The air is full of dire prophecies, warnings, and threats of what will happen if the kingdom of heaven is not precipitately landed at the nearest airport. The air is full of dire prophecies, warnings, and threats of what will happen if the kingdom of heaven is not precipitately landed at the nearest airport. It is important that we recognize the childishness of this. Its ancestor is the kicking fit of childhood, a sort of behavioral false rhetoric that offers the world two absolute alternatives. If I can't have it, I'll tear it up, quote unquote. Its cultural model is the fundamentalist preacher for whom there are no degrees of behavior, who cannot tell the difference between a shot glass and a barrel. The public demand for perfection as opposed to private striving for it, that's an important distinction. The public demand for perfection as opposed to the private individual striving for it, is almost always productive of violence. The public demand for perfection is almost always productive of violence and is itself a form of violence. It is totalitarian in impulse and often in result. The extremes of public conviction are always based upon rhetorical extremes, which is to say that their words and their actions have departed from facts, causes, and arguments, and have begun to follow the false logic of a feud in which nobody remembers the cause, but only what was last said or done by the other side. Language and behavior become purely negative in function. The opponents no longer speak in support of their vision or their argument or their purposes, but only in opposition to each other. Language ceases to bind head to heart, action to principle, and becomes a weapon in a contention deadly as war, shallow as a game. But it would be an oversimplification to suggest the present contention of political extremes involves only the left and the right. These contend not so much against each other as against the middle. The administration in power, which each accuses of being the other. In defending itself, the middle characteristically adopts the tactics of the extremes, corrupting its language by self-congratulatory rhetoric, bearing no more kinship to the truth and to honest argument than expediency demands, and thus it becomes an extreme middle. Whereas the extreme left and right see in each other the imminence of universal wrong, the extreme middle appears to sense in itself the imminence of the best of all possible worlds, and therefore looks upon all critics as traitors. The rhetoric of the extreme middle equates the government with the country, loyalty to the government with patriotism, the will of the chief executive with the will of the people. It props itself with the tone of divine goodwill and infallibility, demanding an automatic, unquestioning faith in its actions, upholding its falsehoods and errors with the same unblinking piety with which it obscures its truths and its accomplishments. Sheesh, I hope that's not me. I know it's not. Maybe it has been at various times, little shades of that or whatever, but not now. Because I say so. I'm no extremist. Because the extreme middle is characteristically in power, its characteristic medium is the one that is most popular, television. As the Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy song goes, television, the drug of the nation, breeding ignorance and feeding radiation. How earnestly and how well this middle has molded itself to the demands of television is apparent when one considers how much of its attention is given to image making or remaking or to public relations. It has given up almost altogether the disciplines of political discourse, considerations of fact and principle, and of human and historical limits and possibilities, and has taken up the cynical showmanship of those who have cheap goods for sale. Its catchphrases do not rise from any viable political tradition. Their next of kin are the TV jingles of soup and soap. It is a politics of illusion, and its characteristic medium is preeminently suited, as it is almost exclusively limited, to the propaganda of illusion. Of all the illusions of television, that of its much-touted educational value, quote-unquote, is probably the first, because its utter transience as a medium and the complete passivity of its audience, television is doomed to have its effect within the limits of the most narrow and shallow definition of entertainment. That is, entertainment as diversion. Or, what's a synonym or same name of diversion? Distraction. To get you off the track of truth and into the lies. The watcher sees the program at the expense of no effort at all. He is inert. All the live connections are broken. More important, a TV program can be seen only once. It cannot be re-examined or judged, not anymore of course, upon the basis of study, as even a movie can be. A momentous event or a serious drama slips away from us among the ordinary furniture of our lives, as transient and fading as the most commonplace happenings of every day. For these reasons, a political speech on television has to be first and last a show, simply because it has no chance of becoming anything else. The great sin of the medium, television, is not that it presents fiction as truth, as undoubtedly it sometimes does, but that it cannot help presenting the truth as fiction. And that of the most negligible sort, a way to keep awake until bedtime. In depending so much upon a medium that will not permit scrutiny, the extreme middle has perhaps naturally come to speak a language that will not bear scrutiny. It has thus abased its own part in the so-called political dialogue to about the level of the slogans and chants and the oversimplified invective of the extreme left and right, a fact that in itself might sufficiently explain the obsession with image making. Hearing the televised pronouncements of the political leaders of our time upon the great questions of human liberty, community obligation, war and peace, poverty and wealth, one might easily forget that such as John Adams and Thomas Jefferson once spoke here upon those questions. Indeed, our contemporary men of power have produced in their wake an industry of journalistic commentary and interpretations, because it is so difficult to determine what they have said and whether or not they meant it. Thus one sees the essential contradiction in the expedient doctrine that the end may justify the means. Corrupt or false means must inevitably corrupt or falsify the end. There is an important sense in which the end is the means. Diane? The solar radiation management spray for artificial cool down to the metal-infused toxins sprayed in the atmosphere to deflect all of the solar radiation back into space here today, to create an artificial cold at ground level to confuse and divide the public about what's going on with climate. It's extreme breakdown and the planetary death spiral we're all in here it's intensifying. There's not much sunlight right now, so there was a little bit more just before I started reading. So let's go do this before it gets too dark, or before, it's so cold that I freeze here in the car, sitting here. I gotta start moving around. I gotta go to the labyrinth and the crucifixion and the Stations of the Cross. I forgot to include the word assassinated in my list this morning with crucifixion and John F. Kennedy, because they all equal the same number, 131. And 131 just happens to be the number of the highway that... Look what I did, Diane. I got caught. This happens sometimes. Caught in a trap. 131 is here in Sturbridge. Route 131. It's the year that I just so happened to come here the year that I realize, or I wake up and see that John F. Kennedy equals the same number as crucifixion and assassinated, 131. And humiliation also equals that number, and repetition. Just keep all that in mind as we do this silent walk now. I mean, if you want. I'm not going to tell you to do whatever you want with your mind, but I'm going to keep it in mind, of course. Dana, Diane, DNA. I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid, which equals 201. Same as Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the first Jesuit Pope Francis. Same as Order of Illuminati. So you should see now why they called it Event 201, and why the 201s 2011 through 2019 were so important to the cabal. Okay, no more talking now. I'm just going to do walking. Talking, no walking. Hey, I thought you said no more talking. Okay. Can I whistle? Hey, no talking. just wanted to say one more thing. Over here, when you go down there, out to the where Main Street, Route 20 meets the road over here. The road over here is 148, which goes to the Brookfields, and 148 is the number, English ordinal gematria or number value of Donald J. Trump, Art of the Deal, and Time Traveler, along with Walter Bishop and Doris Dunning, and some others I have found as well. Route 148 right over here. Number of Time Traveler, Donald J. Trump, Walter Bishop, Doris Dunning. pardon the sniffles, Diane. It's just quite cold out. And I just finished my cup of Black Joe. Alright, I won't talk anymore. I know, I said no more talking for this. Sorry.